Good morning, Bill. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Anwar. How are you?
I'm doing good. How's the weather in Iowa? What do I need to get ready for? Am I going to have to pack a heavy coat?
You'd be shocked at this, but it's supposed to be 68 degrees here today, and it's sunny out. So,
What?
Mother Nature's doing Texas a favor this week because it's supposed to be pretty nice in through the weekend. It'll be a night game, so it'll be a little chilly. But gosh, during the day, you can't beat it.
Man, that is amazing. I don't know if I've ever gone to Iowa and ever attended a game that would have been that warm. I
Yeah,
feel like it's always in late November, and it feels like it's freezing in there.
right,
And
right.
sometimes what's the festival that they sometimes have in Des Moines? Is it like a corn festival or something like that? What is it? There's a festival sometimes that they
Oh
have
gosh,
around this
they've
time.
got the Sweet Corn Festival in one of the smaller towns outside of Des Moines, about a half hour, and
Mhm.
they've got all kinds of them in downtown Des Moines throughout the summer, and they've got one of the smaller towns that's got a covered bridge festival.
Oh
So,
wow! Oh
yeah,
wow!
yeah.
I
So
love
there's all kinds of stuff going on.
Bill. Give me an idea of your early thoughts on this game. This is a game that if Iowa State can pulls off the upset, um, gives them a good chance of getting to Arlington. A lot at stake. I'm just kind of curious to you. Just give me your initial impressions of this game that's upcoming this weekend, and your thoughts of where Iowa State is, where they are right now.
Well, I think they're in a lot better position than they were a week ago. I I thought we would get a lot different effort out of Iowa State against Kansas, and then they kind of went out and laid an egg and took a step backwards. This is a team that had been that went 3-0 in October and was really trending upward, and then kind of laid the egg against Kansas, and you really didn't know what type of team you were going to see last week against BYU. There were so many unknowns in that game, going out on the road and playing a team that somebody had said they'd only lost like 4 games at home under the lights in the last like several decades. I don't know exactly what the stat was, but anyway, Lavelle Edwards Stadium at night, tough place to play. You didn't know what type of Iowa State team you were going to get, and they went out and just laid the wood to them. It just a surprising effort kind of after what we saw of Kansas. So here we are again. They come home, and it's another nationally televised game at night under the lights, Jack Trice Stadium. And 2 weeks ago, they laid an egg against Kansas. So you really don't know. But after the BYU game, winning by 32 in that, and a much more balanced effort offensively, defensively, they held an opposing quarterback under 100 yards passing. So again, Cyclones appear to be trending upward after that game against the Cougars.
Um, and then since then, I mean, give me your impressions so far of Rocco Becht. What are you seeing from him? It's so crazy. I finally I finally put something together. It's hilarious. About Anthony Becht, who I actually covered when he was in the
Yeah.
NFL. So this is crazy. But give me your thoughts on Rocco and what you've been seeing from him.
Well, he's a quarterback that I think has played pretty efficiently. There have been a few key moments here and there. He's had a couple of pick sixes this season. One of them came in that Kansas game. Iowa State lost by 7. Total yardage wise, it was pretty close in that one, but a couple key mistakes in the 3 phases for the Cyclones in that one, and the pick six loomed pretty large. Iowa State fell behind 14-0 after that pick six. But other than that, I think that for the situation that he was put in, he came out of spring ball thinking he was going to be the backup quarterback again this season. And you guys probably have heard of like the gambling stuff that was going on and some of the suspensions with that. Hunter Deckers was the starter last season and came out of the spring. Everybody thought he was going to be number one again, and he was caught up in that. And we're not going to see him this season in the Cardinal and Gold. So in
Mhm.
training camp, Rocco Becht all of a sudden is a redshirt freshman. He played a few times in 2022, but Here he is thrust into this starting quarterback role as a redshirt freshman, and I think he's handled it pretty well. And the offensive line, we've seen that kind of come together. It's another young group under a first year position coach in Ames, and they've been able to run the ball, especially against BYU, over 200 yards, one of their season best performances on the ground there, and that's certainly helped. I think Rocco not put too much on his shoulders, maybe like there was earlier in this season when the Cyclones struggled to run the ball.
How much gains do you think he's made, and or how much improvement do you think he's made since that OU game into what you saw up last week versus BYU?
Well, again, I think he's playing efficiently. The offensive line has done a good job protecting him, so oftentimes he does kind of have the chance to run through his progressions, and he seems to be making the right decisions, I think, in that. A few times against BYU, we saw him take off and run with the ball. One of them, he converted on a 3rd and long, didn't see what he liked and just took off and was very decisive with it. So I think as he's gotten more experience this season, you're seeing a quarterback that's really, I think, learned from his experiences and is really matured beyond his years, only as a 19-year-old kid, redshirt freshman.
Tell me, Bill. Obviously, Bill Seals from the Cyclone Report covers Iowa State for the Rivals Network. Give me your early impressions of the matchup between Iowa State and Texas. How do they fare? I know the areas that Texas is strong, obviously on the defensive line, led by Tavondre Sweat. We know that overall the defense is kind of struggled a little bit in the secondary, but we also know that they've also strong on the offensive line. So both lines of scrimmages, Texas is really strong. But I'm going to get your thoughts, before I can shut up and you can tell me what you think.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. Your very first comment there, Tavondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, those interior guys on the D line are going to be tough. Iowa State, that offensive line still pretty young. They believe it or not, one of their guards is a true freshman.
Oh,
that
wow.
has been thrust into action. So how they can match up against those interior guys for Texas is going to be huge. And I mean, I think that impacts everything. You had a Iowa State's leading running back last week, a true freshman. That's kind of been the story of this Cyclone team. A lot of freshmen playing this season. And you're coming up against a Texas team, a veteran team, those interior guys, though, on the defensive line. I think it's all going to start in how Iowa State picks those guys up and what they can do offensively in this game. You were kind of joking before we got on about if this is going to be a game of field goals. I think Iowa State would be happy to be in position to kick some field goals and then maybe turn a few of those red zone trips into touchdowns with kind of what they're facing in Texas's defense.
The one thing, speaking of defense, though, that's what is usually a trademark, of that Iowa State, a program that's there. Give me an idea where this defense is this year, from what you're seeing. I can look at the stats, but what does the eyeballs tell you?
Well, this was a defense that was very good against the pass early in the season and really struggled against the run. And now we've kind of seen in recent weeks that's kind of flipped a little bit. Granted, they did a great job against BYU holding that Retzloff to under 100 yards passing, but really it had been kind of trending the other way at a team that didn't hold anybody to under 100 yards rushing until the last 2 weeks leading up to the BYU game. They had did for the first time under 100 yards rushing, the two teams they played prior to BYU. And then last week, BYU kind of sold out to running the ball and had some success there. And then Iowa State just put the clamps down on the passing game. So I think for the most part, as you look overall this season, pretty balanced defensively. I would say top 30, though, defensively, and then scoring D, they've done a pretty good job there, really, for the most part.
this obviously is going to be the last game for Texas
Mm.
in this, and of course in this conference, but last trip to Ames as there. It's been a place that's always been tricky for Texas. Your thoughts on what the atmosphere might be like for this final game that's there, and this becomes, for lack of better terms, this is a Super Bowl win. I mean, this is a way to really um to race. First of all, I don't know why at this point, why does Iowa State even play non-conference games? Because I feel like they just every non this I feel like there's always like a letdown in a non-conference game, and then all of a sudden they heat up when it's all said and done. But nonetheless, clear they've heated up, clear Ohio's in the rearview mirror.
Right.
What's that atmosphere going to be like on Saturday night in your opinion?
Well, it's kind of interesting that the Big 12 schedule makers send Texas up to Ames, Iowa. The last not or last Big 12 road game in the regular
Yes.
season will be in Ames, Iowa. But anyway, the weather though, it seems like it's going to be nice. So yeah, I agree. It's been interesting, some of these games up in Ames with the Cyclones and the Longhorns, and under the lights. The crowd's going to be juiced up for that. It'll be end up being a sold out crowd, I think. So, yeah, it should be it should be interesting how things work. I think this has kind of been a game though that Texas has seemed maybe for one reason or another to overlook. I think it's kind of come up after, and I think in recent years, maybe it's come like after a really big game for Texas, or
Mhm.
it's came maybe a week ahead of a big game for Texas. And maybe the Cyclones haven't gotten a Longhorn team that's been totally focused. But gosh, everything on the line though for Texas, I think leads me to believe this is going to be a team that's focused 100% coming into this week with just everything on the line for Texas. Certainly a lot more on the line, I think, than has been in recent years when this game's been played for UT.
Two more questions, Bill, before I let you out of here. How does Iowa State stop the passing game for Texas? Quinn Ewers, while he's not at 100%, we know how effective he can be. Texas obviously has Xavier Worthy on one side, Adonai Mitchell on another, and of course they've got Jatavian Sanders, a tight end, in the middle as well. Some people think he's the second best tight end in the country. What's the Iowa State answer for Texas in that department?
Well, Iowa State has not been a very good pass rushing team for much of this season. You look at kind of the PFF grades there, or just how they've done, and that's kind of been the weakness. But then again, it goes back to what I mentioned about this being a very inexperienced defense in some spots, and they had to replace Will McDonald coming out of last season. He was a first round pick of the Jets, and they haven't really found that alpha dog rusher that kind of come in and take Will's spot, and it struggled. And when Iowa State as a defense has kind of struggled, it's maybe been because of that, and putting a lot of pressure on a secondary that is very strong. TJ Tampa, one of the corners, I think he'll do a great job on his side of the field this Saturday. He'll be playing on Sundays next season, and then that takes you to the other side. They've kind of had some um, maybe I don't know if you'd really call it uncertainty, but they had Miles Purchase was the starter there. He got
Mhm.
benched for a game and kind of played more in the slot. They kind of tinkered around with that. John Tez Williams came in and got the start at the other corner spot, and then last week. Purchase was back on the outside as a starter, and I think had a pretty good game. So secondary, pretty strong. Jeremiah Cooper
Mhm.
as one of the safeties that has been out a couple games now. Coach Campbell said he expects him to be back for this one, and he's an El Paso kid, so he's
Mhm.
probably had this date circled for a while, and he's one of the granted he missed a couple of games, but he's still, I believe, in the top 5 nationally in interceptions. So it's a
Yeah.
very good secondary, but a team that has not been very good rushing the passer, and that could certainly, in a game like this, really stress that
Mhm.
secondary. And you mentioned the tight end. We'll see how the safeties play in this game. It's also a very young group of linebackers. They start a true freshman there and a redshirt freshman, two of the three starting linebackers. So that tight end might be one that Texas looks to utilize a lot in this game.
The last thing, and I'll let you go, Bill. Usually, when I have someone who covers a team, it kind of ends up being my standard kind of final question to them, which is if Iowa State is to win this game on Saturday and pull off the upset, what would have happened or what would need to happen in your mind for that? If it's 11 o'clock at night and the game's over and Iowa State pulled off the upset, what would have happened? What are you writing about?
Well, I think that they need to generate, as I had just mentioned, a pass rush in this game, at least get a little bit of pressure on Ewers, play some complementary football there. And then I think on the offensive side of the ball, it's a team that they've got a great field goal kicker in Chase Contreras, one of the best in the conference. But those opportunities that you get, inside the 25, inside the 20-yard line, you've got to turn those into touchdowns more times than not in this game, because I think Texas is going to have some success. And this is a game probably played in the upper 20s into the 30s, and Iowa State's got to turn those red zone trips into touchdowns. Been one of the best red zone offenses in the conference. More so, I think, because they've got a kicker that's just been automatic. But a lot of those you got to turn into 7 points instead of 3 in a game like this. And also turnover margin. Iowa State top 20 nationally in turnover margin. They won that battle against BYU, another team that had been top 20 in the turnover margin department. So this is a game Iowa State, unlike against Kansas, they've got to win the turnover margin in this game and make something out of that as well.
Bill Seals from the Cyclone Report. Bill, obviously you do good work out there. For anyone who's out there, whether they're Iowa State fan, decided, hey, let me peek in here, or there's a Texas fan that's just kind of curious as to they want to read up on this on an opposing team, tell them how to find your stuff, not only on the website, but also on social media.
Yeah, CycloneReport.com. We're on the Rivals network of team sites. You can go there and get on if you want to. If you're a Texas fan, maybe just on a short term, you want to sign up for a monthly membership. By all means, pretty reasonably priced there. If you're a Cyclone fan, an annual pass. As you know, Anwar, there's no downtime in college athletics anymore. We go right into, well, basketball's already started, and then you've got football recruiting with signing day and just camps over the summer. So there's no downtime. So there's always news to be found on CycloneReport.com.
Thanks, Bill. Oh, you got coach today? What do you got? What do you got planned for today?
Yeah, about 11:30 up in Ames here. So less than a couple hours, we'll have the about 4 Iowa State players that'll come out, and then we'll get the defensive coordinator, John Haycock, this week, done a masterful job with the Cyclone defense during his time. We'll get him for about 15 minutes, and then Matt Campbell, head coach, about 12:15, and then an afternoon of pecking through all of that. And then I'm going to catch up with the publisher over there at Orange Bloods as well, Jason, a little later on, to chat about the matchup as well, give him a little bit of insight into the Cyclones.
Damn, man, that'll be
Busy
pretty
day.
good. Yeah, you have Jason Sukumel. You're going to talk to him a little bit later on today. And do you get the OC as well? Do you guys get the OC at some point?
It's every other week. So we'll get Nate Shieldhouse. He's the first-year guy. We got him just this past week. So it kind of goes every other. Yeah. It's a new arrangement this year, but it's been all right. Tuesdays are a busy one, though.
Well, Tuesdays aren't one here because we don't talk to coordinators. So you enjoy that, and so I'll be checking you out and see what your report is, and I'll share with everyone on here tomorrow on my show.
All right, Anwar. Appreciate you having me on.
All right. Take care, Bill. Take care. Bill Seals from the CycloneReport.com.